Welcome to Vintage SF. I'm Richard Rempel. Today I want to take a look at September, people, places, and books from September. At the end of August and the beginning of September, I was on a holiday, a cruise that started in Montreal, made its way eventually up to St. John's, Newfoundland, and then back down eventually again to Boston. A couple places I highlighted in the tour itself was a store that was in Halifax, actually just north of Halifax in Dartmouth, and it was called John W. Duell. You can find that in the Canadian section of the video for that cruise. I'll have a link in the description below. And the second store was in Portland, Maine, called The Green Hand, and you'll find that in the American section of the cruise. Now, I met somebody interesting on this cruise. He seemed to beat me to every bookstore I wanted to go to. He was also an author. Meet J. Edwin Bouja. I hope I have that last name correct. This is his author page on Amazon. He's a Canadian, but he says his heart and second home reside with his horror family in New England. His novels include The King of the Wood from 2019 and The Consort from 2022. His latest novel, Enough Time, just came out in 2025. The J stands for John, and as I said before, he seemed to beat me to all the bookstores I wanted to go to on the vacation. He often teased me that he'd picked up all the best books already. John, if you're watching, all the best to you, my friend. So let's now move on to books. I already covered the books that I got on my holidays, so we're taking a look at the books from the rest of September, and I was actually surprised with how many came my way. I first want to mention something that I've picked up that I'm not going to talk about in this video. I'm going to dedicate a video of its own to it. These are magazines, Galaxy Magazine, Galaxy Science Fiction, from October 1956 through to December of 1956. There's a very special story in here, and so I want to dedicate a whole video to this, so watch for that in the coming weeks. But let's get to the first book now. I recently read Nonstop by Brian W. Aldiss, and in the comments, a number of people mentioned another generation ship story that I really should read. So I was able to pick up a vintage copy of Robert A. Heinlein's Orphans of the Sky. I kind of like the color here, this green motif, green-blue motif here. It's a very short novel, perhaps even a novella. The universe was 5 miles long and 2,000 feet across. Men scoffed at the legends of such things as stars, or the demented idea that the ship was moving, for the ship was the universe, and there could be nothing outside. Then one man found his way to a forgotten room, and saw the stars, and they moved. Orphans of the Sky, exciting in its plot and action, and stimulating in its speculation, is a science fiction landmark. That does sound very good. I think I may be reading this one pretty soon. Copyright is 1963, so it's later than Nonstop. This book here is the 11th printing of the Berkeley Medallion edition, November 1970. So if this date is right, and if it wasn't perhaps in a magazine before Aldiss's book, then Nonstop came first, and this would come second. If you know better, let me know in the comments below. Next, anytime that I see tour doubles from the 1980s, I pick those up. This one here is a tour double, but it's one of the later ones, so it doesn't have the flip like the Ace doubles does. This is a tour double by Damon Knight, Rule Golden, and Golden Meaning. If we take a look at the back, Rule Golden. So ask yourself, what if what we did unto others was automatically done unto us? That's what seems to happen anywhere near the mysterious alien the government is keeping under wraps. Then a small-time reporter manages to spring the alien from captivity, allowing it to spread its aura worldwide, changing, well, everything. Then double meaning. The Rithian, the deadliest alien in the known galaxy and a master of disguise, is loose somewhere on Earth. Thorne Spangler, the perfect bureaucrat, has bet his career that his methodical ways can penetrate the Rithian's disguise. But assigned to help Spangler is the intolerably uncultured outworlder, Zhaj Pembum. And, worse yet, Pembum's incomprehensibly random methods seem to be working. Penbum, that's quite the name. So this looks like we have two novellas and the second one is a sequel. Interesting. Rule Golden is copyright 1954 and Double Meaning is copyright 1953. Next, I have an author who's only written 2 science fiction novels. I reviewed one of his science fiction novels when I was going through the ACE science fiction specials. There's a second one by this author, Gerard F. Conway, Mindship. This is the second and last science fiction author by him. The reason that he's very interesting is that you may know him better as Jerry Conway, American comic book writer and editor. He's known for writing the Amazing Spider-Man story arc, The Night Gwen Stacy Died. He's also the creator of the Punisher character. I enjoyed his first novel, and so I wanted to pick this one up. And it is a DAW. The Mindship was the breakthrough to the stars. In spite of work on faster-than-light hyperdrives and such, it was the power of the mind that turned out to be the most certain directing force between the worlds. So the Mindships came into being, driven forward by the lines of mental energy, directed by trained crews, and held together, not by the navigator or the captain, but by the man they called the Cork. He was just another man, but he had the ability to siphon out the discords which could wreck a ship, to create the harmony without which Starflight would be disastrous. Kilgarren was such a Cork, but he had deliberately grounded himself until they forced him to take up the mental reins again. It was their risk, and they should have known better, because Kilgarren had ulterior motives no ship's Cork had a right to harbor. So I'm glad to pick this one up. Very much looking forward to reading it. The next is a short story anthology, The Science Fictional Dinosaur. Let's take a look at the stories that are within. Authors such as Harry Harrison, Brian Aldiss, Isaac Asimov, actually a couple by Isaac Asimov, Poul Anderson, Robert Silverberg. What's interesting is it has a geologic time scale and selected Mesozoic reptiles. Let's just take a look at that. So there's a couple pages of the timeline, and they call it a glossary, but that's the selected Mesozoic items. Here's another series of books that I pick up whenever I see them. They're called SF Rediscovery, and this one is The Man in the Maze by Robert Silverberg. A major work of science fiction in which a tormented man is exiled in the cosmos by the most ingenious and dreadful curse ever devised. This may be original printing of Man in the Maze. You can tell me if it's not, but it says copyright 1969, and this printing here is from February of 1969. On the back of these books, they had numbers for the series. My friend Ira at SF Words of Wonder has collected this whole series. I'll put a link to his video in the description to this video. Next is a Locus Award-winning novella. Alistair Reynolds, Slow Bullets. This is copyright 2017. Now, one of the things I find that I'm starting to do in collecting books is I'm looking for odds and ends perhaps that I don't have, or authors that I don't have, but I'm also trying to consolidate my library. Sometimes I have a couple of different books of collected works of an author, and then I come across a larger omnibus size of the same things. That's the case with this one. I had a 2-book set called The Unreal and a second one called The Real. These are selected short stories of Ursula Le Guin. This, though, is the combination of those 2 books. This is, as it says, the collected short stories of Ursula K. Le Guin. And although selected, I'm guessing you might call this the best of Ursula K. Le Guin. But one of the reasons that I was attracted to it is it too has a companion book, The Found and the Lost. And these are the collected novellas of Ursula K. Le Guin. So I've really enjoyed reading Ursula K. Le Guin over the last couple of years, and I look forward to getting to some of these stories sometime. It's also allowing me to move out a few other books in my collection that are covered by these two big tomes. I came across a hardcover book recently for a really good price. William Gibson's Pattern Recognition. This is from 2003, and I believe, there's the man himself, I believe this is actually a first printing. It is. So, once again, another author that I'm slowly starting to collect is William Gibson's work. We'll get back to him eventually. I did read his short stories collection and his first novel, Neuromancer. I plan to go on to the other novels following Neuromancer sometime, probably next year. I have a dilemma. I've read and reviewed Trillion Year Spree by Brian W. Aldiss, a book about the history of science fiction. I came across The Billion Year Spree, his first book. Trillion Year Spree is a revised edition with additional information. I kind of like this edition better, though. It's one of these Corgi SF Collector's Library editions. I'm kind of considering whether I should get rid of the Trillion Year Spree or, I don't know, maybe keep both. Eventually, library space becomes an issue. Here's a book that I was introduced to by Andrea of Infinite Text. Spaceships, Ray Guns, Martian Octopods, Interviews with Science Fiction Legends edited by Richard Wolinski. These are interviews from a radio show called Probabilities, and many really historic authors were interviewed. Let's just read from the back. In these extremely candid radio transcripts, more than 50 legendary larger-than-life personalities recount anecdotes about the lawless era known as the Golden Age of science fiction. Ray Bradbury, Harlan Ellison, Philip K. Dick, Isaac Asimov, Margaret Atwood, Fritz Leiber, Frank Herbert, and many, many more describe the wild personalities, contentious debates, and vivid imaginations that made science fiction thrive. A little further down the page, Bruce Sterling says, "It's a gaudy patchwork quilt of raw gossip and old radio chatter, but it's also the world's most authentic portrait of the real-life professional science fiction fantasists." Now, I actually read this book as soon as I got it, so the next video that you'll see will be a review of this book, and I will talk about how he called the golden age of science fiction lawless, a lawless era. I think that was more his publishers trying to attract readers. But it's a very interesting book. Look for that in the next video. Now, I saved this one for last. An author that some of my friends and I enjoy is James H. Smits. You may know him from The Witches of Charis or perhaps Demon Breed. But I recently found a hardcover book club edition of A Tale of Two Clocks. Now, I don't know if I can clean this up. I'll try and see if I can. But there's James H. Smits and his dog. And here we have a little description of A Tale of Two Clocks, a story of the distant future in which human ambition and greed and the chance discovery of an eerie, robot-like race bring an interstellar civilization to the verge of destruction. A beautiful and quick-tempered young woman, drawn unwillingly into the political intrigues which arise from the discovery of the alien robots and menaced by mysterious foes, finds herself involved in a search for a malevolent entity whose growing power soon will be unleashed in overwhelming fury against all mankind. The search leads her and her companions to a sinister floating fortress in the far depths of space, and to a decision which determines the fate of human civilization. So copyright 1962. It's 206 pages. So that's it. People, Places, and Books from September 2025. Let me know if you have any thoughts about the books I've picked up, or perhaps some information that either corrects me or further information that I should know. So until next time, when I review spaceships, ray guns, and Martian octopods, keep reading.